Welcome to the Weekly Workplace Podcast, your hub for leveling up your workplace skills with a journey to success that's anything but boring. Get ready to ditch the dull and dive into the dynamic. Imagine high fives and fist bumps for triumphing over frontline challenges and confetti cannons for nailing your leadership goals. Our episodes feature interviews with industry game changers, spicy tips from trailblazing pros, and mind-blowing techniques to turn you into the office superhero you were meant to be. So, whether you're rocking the cubicle life or leading from the corner office, grab your cape and get ready to soar to new heights with the Weekly Workplace.
Welcome to the Weekly Workplace, where professionals come to find insights and inspiration for success. With you today,
we're back!
Okay. Again. And so we're actually wrapping up this series, though.
Mm-hmm. It's been fun. This has been a fun series to talk about.
Yeah. It really has been. And what I'm really appreciating is, as we've been talking about it, and hopefully you, if you've watched on our YouTube playlist, you've seen there's aha moments even for us as we're talking about these on these episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every time.
It is. Yeah. And so if you've been following along with us, we've been in the 6 Types of Working Genius series. And I will also say today is the close of that special giveaway we talked about on the last episode. And so make sure that you have all of your comments in on our episode last week or on our Facebook page. If you are interested in getting that 6 Types of Working Genius assessment for free, we are going to be drawing a name here by the end of the week and reaching out to you. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. And it comes with a debrief.
It does.
So it comes with a one-on-one with a certified 6 Working Genius coach.
Yeah.
A certified genius, Ray.
Certified. No. 6. Certified. Certifiable. But yeah. So one-on-one.
Yeah. I think it's great.
Yes.
Yeah, I do.
This has been eye-opening for me, not only just come back and have done this assessment to talk about, but I mean, these conversations actually help me even more as a certified facilitator in this practice, because I love the opportunity to get to hear firsthand from the geniuses. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think as we start into this episode, one of the things we really wanted to do as we wrap up the series is think about practical applications. And I think that's just it. What we've done over the course of the last, 9 weeks now is really just talking about it. Mm-hmm. And are you on your team spending time just talking about it? Well, have you taken the assessment, right? And then spending time talking about it.
I was going to ask you as I was thinking about this, because I've had several clients be very interested in the 6 Working Geniuses, and all of them have been leaders of teams. And so it's like the leadership group wants to take the assessment. And my question then is, how valuable? I know it's still valuable because raising your own awareness, but without having your team take it, so the leader might know, but then the leader goes back to the team and kind of has this behind the curtain, knowledge.
Right.
I didn't know what your thoughts were on that.
I will tell you, as a facilitator in this now, I've done the sessions all different ways. So I have done multiple teams that are not necessarily intact, that are the leaders or are over multiple different departments, those kinds of things. And then I've done the intact teams. And I have found the experiences to be so much more valuable when you're done with an intact team.
Sure.
Because what we do in those sessions is you get the opportunity to not only take the assessment to figure out what kind of working genius you are, to really understand what all of it means, because we do that in session. We do hands-on activities. We also will sit and analyze your team profile. Yeah. And when I think that that's probably my favorite part of it, is when we can sit and look and you see the ahas on teams where it's like, that
makes so much sense.
Yeah. And so I was working with a team not too long ago, an intact team, and they had done the whole, everyone did the assessment in their department, and we're looking at their team profile together. And, for the first time, it was like light bulb moments as they realized they only had one person on their team that had the genius of discernment, and they only had one person on their team that had the genius of galvanizing. So when you're talking about that activation stage of work, they were completely missing it. And they were wondering why it seemed like feelings weren't as strong about any actions that were being taken, because that was that space of activation. We went from ideation straight into let's do it, which happens in a lot of workplaces. Yeah. It really does. And so what has been helpful for you all in this process as you have learned about the 6 Types of Working Genius, as we've had the conversations about it, as we've started applying it as a team?
Well, that's what I kind of like about this is that we get to sit around and talk about
Yeah.
ourselves to bring not only awareness to myself, but also I need to understand you all too. And so when we are able to talk about those geniuses and actually provide examples of how they work in our daily work lives, it really then starts to kind of come together for me. And, you think about all the practical applications of this stuff, right? Aligning tasks with certain geniuses, for example, or, partnering with somebody else with a genius that you don't necessarily have just to get something, again, across the finish line. So understanding that is just, wow, what great application in terms of a leader to use for your team.
Yeah.
I think, having the space, as both of you had mentioned, just to sit around and literally sit around and talk about this with, there's no risk, like we're not talking about a specific project that's stalled or is coming on board. It's not related to anything that's in the hopper. It's just general. And, thinking about how then, as I reflect back, like, how have I given grace or how can I in the future give grace, in that space when somebody's really in their genius and just as bright as a 1,000,000-watt bulb, and just kind of celebrating that.
Yeah.
Your turn will come because there is a need for every single one of these geniuses.
That's right.
It's just figuring out when, and what are you doing in the times when somebody else is shining?
Yeah. The other thing that I take a look at this is think about project management, how this really relates to, you start with an idea, right? You wonder about it, you discern about it, you go through all the six geniuses until it's completed, just like a project is. So I just think, wow, there's so many applications there for that.
Well, and that was my favorite thing about this assessment. I think so originally, full transparency here, Dewey's the one that brought this to. It was like, hey, would you be interested in getting certified in this? And I was like, yeah, okay, sounds good. I like Patrick Lencioni, and I thought, what a great way to learn a little bit more in this. It seemed simple, just at face value. And then we get into the certification, and I was like, the practicality. Like, for me, it is simple and it's practical. It's easy. I mean, we can start this tomorrow. And we did. When we went through it as a team, we started thinking about, how are our meetings going? What meeting are we in right now? Are we in a big strategic meeting at this point? Okay, well, knowing what we know about our geniuses, who would lead this meeting? What are we trying to accomplish? Are we in our daily stand-up meeting, all the way down to that elevation, that, 5,000 foot to ground level elevation, trying to get things done on a day-to-day basis? Okay, well, who has what genius and who needs to be leading these meetings? And I mean, that's probably the most transparent space where I really see this having come into play for us, beyond just really learning more about each other. But you're absolutely right. They often say, they say that in Patrick Lencioni kind of quoted that, every job is a 6-letter job. And so you need all 6 of these. And it's just really starting to now put people in the right places at the right times to flourish. And that's really it, is everyone, and we said it, has a right to be happy. I think, especially when we're at work and we're spending most of our waking day here. So how do we bring people into that space of more joy, fulfillment, and energy? And it's let them do what they're naturally good at.
Yeah. Yeah. And seek that space for yourself. Because I know, I've taken jobs because I needed a job.
Yeah. We all have.
I mean, that kind of thing. I needed a job out of college, took a job as a teller, never thinking I would, grow into a leadership position there, and so just continue to seek that fulfillment, because there is a place for absolutely every single person.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Let me ask you all, as we're thinking through this, because you have done a lot of we're all certified in something around this table, and you've done a lot of other assessments before too. How did you see this one being different from the other assessments, or did you?
Well, I don't really see this as a personality kind of assessment that a lot of them are like, whether you're talking about True Colors or Myers-Briggs or something like that. what I liked about this is it tapped into people's strengths a little bit. It tapped into their natural abilities and talents. And so that's what I liked about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I liked it was at every level, I think. When you're taking those, like our EQI or our Clifton Strengths, of course, we have Hogan now on board as a personality assessment. They're very internal.
Mm-hmm.
And what I loved about this and what I talk to all of my clients about is this is for everybody in the room. It raises your awareness, of course, but it gives you like the awareness of someone else as well. And then okay, how do we work that? Or what are you doing that maybe you wish you weren't doing that somebody else who would love to be doing that isn't doing? And so I love that from a 360 perspective.
Yeah. I was working with a team the other day, and what was interesting, you talked about the leaders. You asked a big question at the beginning, is this, good for just like a team of leaders to take, or is it better if it's an intact team? And one of the things that's really important to note about the 6 types of working genius is that the leader's impact is 2 times more than anyone else on the team, right? Because you think of the position of authority, if you will. And so their geniuses have 2 times the impact on a team. And in this particular team, what was really eye-opening, I think, for the leader at that moment was she looked at the team profile and realized that she had hired a lot of people that were just like her. Yeah.
I would wonder how often that.
Yeah. And so part of this with this package, if you're looking to bring it into your team, I actually will bring you a hiring guide, an idea of how you can use the 6 types of working genius when you're considering hiring folks. Like, how can we apply this now, this information? How can we word our interview questions in a way that, might help us determine where someone's operating out of, or how much of a genius, might need to be filled, those kinds of things. You can use this in a way to really form a team that, again, covers all 6 gears of the working genius. And I think that was something she was talking to me about afterwards was, well, what do I do here now? Our team is fully staffed. I was like, that's great. I said, we all still have the opportunity to operate in some of these spaces. Right. So now you're going to have to work to hone some of those other skills that maybe, weren't geniuses or aren't competencies for you all right now. A lot of things that were in one particular stage of work. And so that takes time and that takes energy and intentionality.
Yeah. You had mentioned in our previous episode on tenacity, hearing you just again, but it hit me then, this idea if you're operating out of a place that isn't either your genius or maybe your competency, and could be an area of frustration, or that burnout is more likely to happen. And so I think, as I'm reflecting on the team you just talked about, where everybody was maybe in, 2 or 3 different spaces and we were missing in the other 3, that responsibility for those other spaces needs to be shared. So if you always use, employee A to cross the finish line and wonder why there's more resistance there. Yeah. Maybe now it needs to be employee B does it this time and then employee C, and then we can get back to employee A or, whatever.
Yeah.
Because so that just kind of hit me then, that yes, hiring maybe in an area that would enhance your team, but recognizing I do have my team.
Right.
How can I better utilize and get them in to the right spaces and avoid pushing them into that burnout space?
Yes. And I think that that's something, you can look at not just the geniuses. So on that team's case, no one had a genius in a couple different areas. And so it was, okay, well, what do we do now about that now? Well, who has a competency in it, right? And so to your point, that would be kind of the next piece of the next question in line. Who has a competency in it? Okay, knowing that these 3 people or 4 people have a competency in it, then you're right. How do we share that responsibility? Because we don't want to continuously just put it off on that one person. This happens so much in the workplaces. And a lot of times, if you were to look at someone at face value and to be like, oh, well, I think your geniuses would be A or B. And this happened in a session. I really thought you would have had this genius. And I said, well, is it one of your competencies? And she said, yes. And I said, do you enjoy doing it? She goes, I think I'm just good at it, And it was that reality check for the leader at the time of, oh, I thought you really enjoyed it.
Right. Right.
And it was a learned skill. We talked
Mhm.
about that. It's just something she had to do because the role hadn't been there. But I mean, too much of that does lead to burnout.
Yeah.
Leads to burnout. And so when I think of kind of future focused, spaces with this, I really want to encourage teams to, number one, take the assessment. And if it's
Yeah.
not through us, right, it's available online. I hope you'll consider taking it through us. We would get you that team profile and of course the debrief. And I'm happy to sit down with leaders one-on-one beforehand so that we can talk about, what does this look like? What's the process going to be? But then really starting to kind of plan out the next action steps after you've taken the assessment, after you understand the 6 types of the working genius, is then reflecting on some really important questions. When you think about the scope of your work, the service that you're delivering to people, what your geniuses are representative of, what strengths you have, what weaknesses you have, what could that mean? What are the implications on the people you're serving? And so that's kind of the whole process of this, is really identifying beyond just how we're working as a team now, what implications or consequences in some ways can this have on who we are serving as our clients or the products we're delivering, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just I'm just reflecting on a lot of that now even. And of course, the smaller the team, the greater the impact.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
You know?
That's true.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. That was as we sat and looked at one, and this was a team I'd worked with. They had a lot in the implementation stage of work, but very minimal in the activation stage of work.
Mhm.
And so you start posing questions, and these are some of the things that I would ask in those sessions is, how excited are people about the work that you're doing? Have you identified the right work? Has it been communicated clearly in a way that people could be influenced by it? How do your customers perceive you then? Because if we're not in that galvanizing, genius, then how are we getting people fired up or excited or communicating well to people what we're actually working on versus just getting the work done,
Mhm.
right? And so those are different questions as you, again, think about your particular team, your department, the people that you're serving. So I just really want to emphasize it goes beyond just the personality assessment, knowing who you are. It goes beyond just how your team works together. This has implications in the services and the products that we're delivering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's one thing to know yourself and know how you best operate, or at least just that self-awareness.
Mhm.
And, we've often talked about like, that's your identity,
Right.
Is who you think you are. But I think in any work environment at whatever level you're at, obviously more impact in a leadership position, how other people see you.
Yes.
Right? That's your reputation. And so that already presents itself
Mhm.
maybe different than how you see yourself,
Yeah.
is how your employees see you or how your coworker sees you. Is that how you see yourself,
Right.
Because making all these notes and scribbles and, pieces of to-do lists and everything that we were hearing
Mhm.
about last week, and somebody was like, that's so frenetic and disorganized, And so for our tenacious person, that was exactly in line with his genius. And somebody else is like, this is chaos,
Yeah. Yeah.
and walk away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We've got to certainly be aware. We've got to be aware. And I guess I'm curious from your all's point of view, how do you see or what encouragement would you give to leaders, knowing that you all are in leadership positions and knowing where we might be later if we ever add to our team, those kinds of things? What ways would you encourage leaders to utilize this particular assessment beyond everything we've discussed today?
First of all, take it. Like that. I just think you got to start with that.
Mm-hmm.
But slow down.
Yeah.
We get so caught up in, do, go, more, less, just slow down. And I know we've said it a million times throughout the last 15 years that I can remember because that's how long I've been here. But, sometimes you got to slow down to speed up, because it might take somebody that's either it's a frustration for them and they're working out of it. It's going to take them longer, maybe infinitely longer than somebody who's working out of their genius to do it. And so I think slow down and get some perspective and get some focus.
Yeah. I would say that don't be afraid to have some of those tough conversations around these 6 geniuses, what frustrates me might not frustrate somebody else, but we've got to be able to talk about that, right? And
Absolutely.
kind of solve those little those little problems. And so that's what another thing I would encourage you to don't run away from the conversation about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what's nice though about having an expert in the room, you know, having some outside objective debriefing, you know, is that maybe can open up the dialogue, maybe, as I like to say, kind of pick the scab a little bit. So it's not that person against that person as much as it is, let's have the dialogue and then, you know, in a safe space because the facilitator's here.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So I think that's also what's nice about bringing somebody in from the outside.
Well, and I'll tell you, I think one of my favorite things, and we mentioned it on episode 1, I don't know that we've mentioned it a whole lot since then, but the hope is beyond just getting more efficient and effective as a team. I want us to think about, too, really releasing guilt and judgment. I think that that's a space where this particular assessment really helps us thrive, because when we consider the amount of guilt we place on ourselves for not being able to do the things that other people are able to do, you know, maybe we start taking on too much because we want to look like we can do it all, even though it, you know, it's going to lead to burnout, or we start mismatching our tasks and then we feel like a failure all the time. And then there's guilt that's associated with that. And then, of course, the judgment outwardly to, you know, the people, the teammates around us, where we look at someone and judge, you know, well, why would they have reacted that way? Or they must be emotionally unstable, you know, when they're working out of a frustration at that point, a working frustration. And so these are things that I want us to be able to reduce in the workplace, because ultimately that is a huge hurdle. And we usually spend a whole session talking about guilt and judgment, but that's a huge hurdle to be able to get to that space of truly a productive, effective, efficient team.
Yeah. We talk about judgment a lot in the Energy Leadership Index, right? Because that's all perspective based and belief based. And, you know, you said those inner thoughts of what you believe to be true, right? Based on the story you're telling yourself. Right. And, you know, how then can you release that to actually increase your energy and change your perspective or shift your situation?
Yeah. So, team, I want to ask you, as we close out this series, any final takeaways?
Pump the brakes just a little bit.
Okay.
You know, just slow down just a little bit. Take a breath and get some perspective.
Absolutely.
And talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? Don't be afraid to talk about it.
Get that common vocabulary. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good point.
And so I want to thank you all. Well, Dewey, thank you for letting me get certified in this, because I could talk all day about the 6 types of working genius. So
I'm glad you got it. I'm glad you liked it.
Yes.
You enjoyed the experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things that I haven't noted, they actually just came out with a student assessment. So primarily our audience is, you know, working professionals, but I do have access and am very familiar with the student assessment, which runs very similarly, but has questions that are targeted more towards high school students, you know, who are working in, or even young college professionals. And so really thinking through, like, would this be something that could be helpful for them? Reach out to us for that as well. I'd be happy to walk alongside you in that process.
Yeah. EQI has that for students.
Do they now? That's excellent. Yeah, that takes all these assessments coming out with that stuff. I wish I had it when I was a kid.
Yeah. Well, I think they actually use it in the College of Business, or I used it with one of the groups here at the university.
Okay. All right. Well, there you have it. And so I encourage you, let us know if there's any questions, comments, anything throughout the series that maybe just hit a spot where you wanted to dive in a little bit deeper. mti@missouri.edu. And again, final day to post a comment saying, hey, I want that working genius assessment, or give us an impact story as this series has affected you. Something in our comment section on any of the podcast players of choice or our Facebook page. And we will draw for that winner on Friday. So we'll reach out to you then. But team, thank you for a great series.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Very
you.
interesting.
Yes. We're still determining where the next series is going to go, but I have a feeling our next series is actually going to be leading us into a space of management fundamentals. So really identifying the processes of management. And that should probably be about a 4 or 5 episode series. So if you're in that space between supervisor and leader, that management space, and you all do such a good job clearly defining exactly what management looks like. So come back next episode and we will be looking at that. And until then,
go be great.
And that's a wrap, folks. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Weekly Workplace. We hope you've been inspired, equipped, and ready to tackle whatever challenges come your way. But before you go, remember, the journey to success never stops. Keep grinding, keep growing, and keep striving for greatness. And hey, if you want to stay ahead of the game and never miss an episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you thought of today's show. Your feedback fuels our fire. Also, show us some love by liking and sharing this podcast with your friends, colleagues, and fellow go-getters. Together, let's spread the knowledge and empower more professionals to reach their full potential. For even more tools and resources to elevate your career, check out the Missouri Training Institute. So until next time, keep hustling, keep learning, and keep dominating the workplace.